Good morning. I'm Jake Ward. I'm the president of the Connected Commerce Council. Thank you for joining us today for this discussion on the state of small businesses in South Carolina and the overall economic health of the state amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's discussion is highlighted by some policymakers. We in fact have the governor here with us today, as well as the lieutenant governor and the assistant majority leader, and small businesses from the Lowcountry, as well as some leaders of Chamber of Commerce, Council of Competitiveness in Columbia and Myrtle Beach, respectively. We're going to have a couple of panel discussions touching on a number of topics, all of which center around the idea that we are not done with the pandemic, but we are starting to come out of this very complex and hard time that small businesses have been facing over the past 18 months. I represent an organization called the Connected Commerce Council, whose sole mission is to help small businesses engage with digital tools and technologies. Now, pre-pandemic, that was a very large number of American small businesses. Amid the pandemic and post-pandemic, it's generally every small business in the country. We work with small businesses of every size, across industries, everywhere in the country, to help connect with the marketplaces, whether they be Amazon or eBay or Shopify, the back-end tools like Intuit and CRMs like Salesforce, and advertising organizations to help grow their audiences. Now, you may be thinking, I'm a small business owner, I own a bookstore on Main Street in Somerville, this doesn't really apply to me. But what we found during the pandemic is that it applies to everybody, right? The ability to transition your business online or to support your business functions with digital tools often meant the difference between going out of business, closing your doors temporarily, or really thriving during the pandemic when you were able to offer a service or provide goods that your competition wasn't. And we're going to touch on a number of themes and topics today that are rooted in some research that the Connected Commerce Council has done over the past 18 months, specifically around the idea of a digital safety net, which is to say that small businesses who pre-pandemic were using digital tools, services, marketplaces to support their businesses were much more likely to survive the initial stages of the pandemic, even without access to PPP or EIDL loans and funding. They were also much more likely to bounce back quickly. The safety net is real. It affected, we think, nearly 11 million small businesses, saved them from closing their doors permanently during the past 18 months. During that time, a number of things have happened across the country, including government programs, public-private partnerships, federally funded but state organized efforts to get into the lowering the barrier for small businesses using digital tools and services. So we are delighted today to welcome the governor. Governor McMaster is here for a few minutes to discuss the state of South Carolina's small businesses, what we can do as a community and as a state. As a small business owner based in Charleston, I'm delighted to have you here today, Governor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jake. I'm happy to be here too, and dittos on everything you said. We have learned a lot during the pandemic. It seems that we learn a lot during the hurricanes. We learn a lot anytime we are oppressed. It's sort of like they say that the only way to get anything done is to have a deadline. And then you all of a sudden you can find time to do things. Well, when you have to do something, you have to find new ways. That's when we find them. But our opportunity, I think, for small business in South Carolina, which of course that's where most people work. And I want to remind everybody is that business is South Carolina's business. That is our business. And that's why we took the course we did, which I think has turned out to be the smart one during the pandemic, and not trying to close everything down, but trying to keep everything open as much as we could. But this has given us some insight and some real opportunities in how we can be smarter and better, do things better and be more profitable. As the old saying goes, instead of sawing harder, you sharpen the saw. Well, anybody who's tried to cut wood with a dull saw knows exactly what that means. But we've seen a lot of opportunities and had a lot of imagination and have looked for ways to do things better. And what we're talking about here today is right on target, because this it's a new arena that we're in with all sorts of new communicative avenues And they are going to be pushed along by some big factors. One is down at Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is just about 10 miles across the river, the Savannah from North Augusta. That's where the cyber command for the Department of Defense is. And also the National Security Agency has a place there as well, which is unique in the country. But that's based on cyber, that's based on data, that's based on all of the things that we're seeing portions of and parts of it can be used in these businesses. And also with the Savannah River National Laboratory, that again is going to be a place where a lot of new ideas and imagination touching on these kind of things are likely to emerge. And I would remind everybody finally, just as we talk together and share our ideas and communicate, collaborate, and cooperate, that's the way to get ahead. And one place where that's happening in our state, and this is unusual, we have so much of this going on in our state, but just down the street from where I'm sitting at the University of South Carolina, the corner of Blossom and Assembly Street is the IBM's data analytic headquarters for the United States. And also co-located there in that university building, of course, a lot of university researchers. Also Siemens gave hundreds of millions of dollars worth of software for analytics. Yaskawa, Japanese robot company, has people there. Samsung has people there. And of course, the university has graduate students, professors, undergraduates, all working shoulder to shoulder, talking to each other, finding new ways to do new things. So I think we can take advantage of this network of collaboration and cooperation that we have in our state, primarily through our small businesses working to find better ways to do things, to be more efficient, to be more profitable, to help more people, of course, with their careers is the way to go. So this is exciting. And I think I can say you can count your state government in on whatever that we and the various agencies, and there are a lot of them, of what we can do to promote what is being discussed here today.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it. I think that's a lesson we should all learn, that it doesn't have to be a global pandemic that is the crisis small businesses face. It can be hurricanes, it can be earthquakes, it can be droughts, or just economic downturns generally, that small businesses that are more agile and more able to transition and pivot are more likely to succeed. Thank you, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for your continued leadership. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and bring in our first panel and welcome Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette and Jay West, the Assistant Majority Leader of the South Carolina House Republican Caucus, as well as some local small business owners, Mimi Striplin, owner of the Tiny Tassel here in Charleston, and Harold Hughes, the founder and CEO of Bandwagon. Good morning, welcome everybody. Do we have everybody? Yes, we do, thank you. Before we jump in, and I have some questions for you guys, would you mind going around and doing just a brief introduction? Madam Lieutenant Governor, you don't need much of an introduction, but if you wouldn't mind, terribly.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. It's always wonderful to talk about business and how South Carolina's business is business. I'm Pamela Evette. I'm the 93rd Lieutenant Governor of the great state of South Carolina. I started my third year in this role, but before this, I've been a business person. Started a business here in South Carolina, grew it nationally. And so I'm always very excited to talk about business and just how well our businesses are doing here in South Carolina, in part to the great leadership we have from the top to the bottom. So thank you for having me here today.
Wonderful, thank you. Mimi?
Hi, I'm Mimi Striplin, founder of the Tiny Tassel, based here in Charleston, South Carolina. We are an online and brick and mortar retail shop. We offer handmade jewelry and clothing and different local brands and makers in our shop. And we have just been so grateful for all of our digital tools. And I'm so excited to be here to talk to y'all about that today.
Wonderful, welcome, thank you. And Harold, thanks for hopping on.
Good morning. Yeah, sorry I had to step away. We've got like a 2-week-old in the room next door.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, so Bandwagon is a tech startup headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina. We're using blockchain technology to help bring fans and their favorite artists, athletes, teams, and entertainers together. One of the things I know has been really tough about the pandemic is that a lot of us haven't been able to go out and see some of the favorite creatives that, have been struggling due to some of the cost here. And so we want to find ways to bring people back together safely, creating some unique memories and making sure they're able to gather together again.
It's wonderful. It's a great product. Everybody should check it out. Assistant Leader West, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, Jay West. I live in Belton, South Carolina. Grew up in a textile family and was in the academy for a while as VP of a college in South Carolina, and then moved on to consulting and developing companies. Most of the companies I consult for are larger, but now I do get quite a bit of questions and they elicit advice from some of the smaller companies around. And and then I'm doing a lot of executive development as well. So I appreciate you having me.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I don't think that it's any coincidence, and it's certainly not by mistake, that the 4 people we have on this call today are small business owners or were small business owners, and that we are extending sort of the culture of small businesses, which is that we help each other when we're not trying to beat each other. We help each other, we build communities, we understand that the challenges we face may be individual, but the experience of being a small business owner is universal. Right? It requires resolve. It requires a faith. It requires a level of commitment and self-reliance that a typical 9-to-5 salary job simply doesn't. Never has that been more true than over the past 18 months. The subject of our panel, at least nominally, is talking about how to make South Carolina small businesses more efficient and more effective, particularly during the pandemic. So why don't I open up this question, Harold, to you and ask, what have you done during the pandemic that has either highlighted the work that you did before to make your business more agile and more efficient, or created an opportunity or a need, as the governor said, let no crisis go to waste, that created the need that led you to successfully transitioning and keeping your business alive?
Yeah, I mean, it was really crazy. At the time that everything was happening, we were starting to sign deals with major sports leagues, as well as major concert venues. And what ended up happening was that those deals kind of fell apart. So last March, we actually acquired another company. We saw that a lot of the major event organizers weren't going to have fans in venue, but we knew that people weren't going to sit at home for 12 months, as we've seen, right? But instead, we saw a lot of Zoom events, and we saw smaller, more intimate events, community theaters, projects in the park, and smaller venues. So Bandwagon actually acquired a company called Ideal Seat last March, which allowed us to basically create an Eventbrite competitor. One of the things we looked at was, well, what does Eventbrite do really well? Well, they allow anyone to create a ticketing platform. Okay, what could Eventbrite do better? I'm sure if everyone watching this right now went in their email, you would have an email from Eventbrite sending you some nonsense that you're not interested in. And so what we wanted to do is create a platform that allowed for the event organizer to be really, really controlling of your customer data, because all of us care about that, to really make the brand important. And so that's what we did. So for us to survive, we actually acquired another company, launched a new product last year, and we're able to grow our revenue more than 212%. That was really a Hail Mary. We told our team at the high level, a lot of good businesses are going to go under last year. And even now we're seeing some more. So if we're going to go out of business, let's go out swinging. And so we decided to be really aggressive and play offense. And fortunately, that's really helped us out over the last 18 months.
That's great. That's great. I've heard a lot of small businesses say that success, particularly during the pandemic, meant seeing around corners. Mm-hmm. I graciously disagree. I think it means being able to see through walls. Right? It's looking at these obstacles as an opportunity and having some X-ray vision, and then taking the bet. Mimi, I know that you face many of those same challenges as a brick and mortar store in Charleston. How has the past 18 months been for you, and what have you done to stay afloat?
The past 18 months has been phenomenal. It's kind of crazy to say that as a small business owner, but we've seen so many others see so much success and growth during this time, because we were able to really act quickly, use all of our tools that we had, which were basically all the online tools that any small business owner could also have access to. And we were able to really take advantage of it and work quickly and make changes in our business where we were able to move to more online sales and keep our team safe, keep our customers safe in that way, and be able to really grow our business. We saw over 1,000% growth in the first few months of the pandemic, which was nuts to say because typically it was the opposite. And we were able to really strategize, work more intentionally because the pandemic forced us to stop and think, okay, what's working, what's not working, what can we kind of dive into a little more? And being able to use all of those digital tools like email marketing, finding different ways to reach our customers through social media, that really connected us with our core customers and allowed us to grow our customer base quite a bit.
Wonderful. And before I throw this question over to the Lieutenant Governor, let me say that one of the best parts of doing roundtables like this is putting small businesses next to policymakers and then asking the question, so what do you think? What are you going to do about this? So let me ask, you've just heard from two of South Carolina's brightest small business stars and the work that they've done. So my question to both of you is, what is the public-private partnership? What are the public programs? What are the things that government at a state and local level can do to facilitate both Mimi and Harold's work effort and reward the ethic of so many more South Carolinians? Ma'am?
So first and foremost, congratulations on your success. South Carolina, we have fared so much better than most states during this incredibly challenging time. And a lot of it is because as leaders, we wanted businesses to be able to grow and thrive and make good decisions on their own, know what was safe for them and their employees. The best thing about my job as Lieutenant Governor is I get to meet with businesses. It goes along with what you're asking, and to hear what they're saying and actually try to help connect them with what will continue to make them grow and prosper. Here in South Carolina, we had very low unemployment going into the pandemic. We worked very hard to make sure we supported business every way we could. When you talk about public-private partnerships, this administration has focused on that 100%. Going in and tapping the brakes as we were trying to figure out what the effects of COVID-19 would be was hard, but opening up we knew would be challenging. And so what the governor did, what our administration did was to have Accelerate SC. And what did we do during that? We brought in private business, we brought in local government, we brought in state government, we brought in our federal government as far as Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham. We brought in the Hospital Association, education, we brought in the Manufacturing Alliance. What we did is we wanted everybody at the table. We wanted business to tell us what we could do to help them, right? What could we do to get consumer confidence up so we could get people back in their doors, whether it be Tiny Tassel, whether it is to get people excited about going back out and seeing their favorite singer, going back to your favorite restaurant. And we took all those suggestions and came up with plans. And I think it was a big part of that was got our state cranked up to really get moving again. And it was private-public partnerships that did that. So I'm very proud of our administration. I'm very proud of how we work with our General Assembly. Accelerate SC was the platform of how the General Assembly looked at distributing CARES money, how we tried to get money out. The governor got money out for small business grants for our small businesses to keep them going. And I just thank everybody. South Carolina, we really are a family and we do help each other. And it's something we may take for granted because it's what we're used to and what happens here every day. But I can tell you when I sit with 49 other lieutenant governors, that is not the way it happens everywhere. So very proud of what we've done. I'm very proud of our businesses, how resilient they were. And I'm just looking forward to what's happening ahead, because as I said earlier, South Carolina's business is business. And we're seeing tremendous excitement, not just across the country, but from people across the globe looking to come here and call South Carolina home.
Well, as a relatively recent transplant, I can tell you that it is not like this everywhere.
No,
and it is
not.
It is wonderful. It is wonderful. Mr. West, what do you think about this from a government standpoint, but also from years in the private sector and what you see in terms of opportunities and sort of breakthrough moments for South Carolinian small businesses?
Well, from both sides, I think government and the small business side, one of the things that we usually do is we kind of default back to maybe I'm the only one on here that remembers an 8-track tape player, right? But it's like we spend our time trying to fix the 8-track tape player when we're downstreaming music. And so I think it's to be, from the government standpoint, to be forward thinking from this point forward, right? To address policies that affect the small businesses as they are now and how they're going to be in the future, and to get the tools into the hands of those small businesses. I mean, right now, we have a lot of tools on the internet. You have Google for small businesses, to Visa Direct Pay. Venmo. You got all kind of tools that can be incorporated into these small businesses to help them to be much more efficient and much more productive. It's usually the same issue that we have with most everything else, and that is making those tools available and communicating to the small businesses appropriately that those tools are available. And then not only that, but maybe using other resources like our technical colleges, our colleges and universities, to provide those free seminars for them to come in and to touch the technology and to get a feel for it, and then to begin to implement it into their small businesses. On the governmental side, I think one thing that the pandemic taught us was that even the government services can be much more user-friendly for the small businesses, whether it's employees that are being laid off or companies trying to rehire, which is the situation we're in right now. So I think trying to bring that technology back from the government side to the small businesses, and then vice versa, so that small businesses are able to do business with their consumer bases and from business to business. So, anything that we can do policy-wise, anything that we can do to provide an incentive for those colleges, universities, career centers, chambers to begin to offer these things and push it out into where it is actually usable for our small businesses. And, I'm 57, right? The fear of technology can be there. Thankfully, I'm a little more progressed than I used to be, but it's getting people comfortable with it and, helping them to understand how it can grow their business for the future.
It's always affirming, but a little complicating when a panelist takes all of my talking points. But I'll let me. It's okay. Let me build on top of that to say that for the Connected Commerce Council, I started 3C 4 years ago with the idea of digital tools and services being a silver bullet for small businesses. I grew up in a really small town in northern Maine where you didn't have access to the kind of resources that you would even in a larger city in Maine, let alone a metropolis. The idea of flattening the landscape and getting small businesses to reach outside their geographic borders appealed to me. And so as that work began, increasingly 3C became as much an advocacy organization as a resource organization, because many of the businesses that are providing the scalable, secure, affordable tools that we're talking about, whether it be Google or Facebook or Apple or Amazon and others, come under fire for other reasons. And so we find that we are increasingly advocating on behalf of small businesses at a federal level, particularly. As we know, Senator Scott, who sits on the Small Business Committee in the Senate, is a huge proponent of small business success, empowerment zones, and standing up for South Carolinian small businesses. But there's also this move within the House and the Senate to reduce access to those tools through new legislation, through antitrust and competition. And so we, as a small business community, find ourselves coming to the state level and saying, thank you. Could you tell your federal brethren to leave us alone, please? We need to continue to have access to these tools, which are widely available. But most importantly, as Assistant Leader West just said, education is the problem, right? It's the barrier. People of a certain age or a certain experience say that'll cost too much, it'll be too hard, it's not worth it. And we found in our research over thousands of small businesses that we surveyed throughout 14 months last year and the year before, that if we could lower the barrier to entry, if more small businesses would get online, if they use these tools, we could have saved tens of millions of American jobs over the past 18 months. And we need to prepare for the local crises, not just global pandemics. So let me pivot this back over to Mimi and Harold particularly and say, can you talk to us a little bit about the specifics of the tools that you've used? Mimi, you alluded to this, sort of all the tools that are available to every small business. Can you be a little more specific about what they are and frankly, what you do without them?
We use everything from Shopify to house our online store, and in our brick and mortar, we use it for our point of sale. We use all of the Google products like Sheets, Drive, all of that. We use Facebook, Instagram, all of these amazing things every single day in our business. We order lots of supplies from Amazon, and all of these are very low cost or free. And we've just really learned how to take advantage of these platforms and really use it in our favor. And we always encourage any other small business, like, hey, if you aren't using this, why aren't you? Like, let us help you, let us encourage you, because we're able to show others how successful we've been by just spending 30 minutes every day planning social media things and reaching tons and tons of customers that we would not have been able to reach here in Charleston when our business was shut down, or when it just was not safe enough to encourage our customers to come in and shop in person with us.
Great. Harold?
Yeah, for me, as a tech startup, it's been really interesting to see all the different tools that the companies create as part of accelerator packages or benefits for being in relationships with them. So we use Twilio and their startup software credits for our two-factor authentication. Again, we care a lot about data and privacy and safety. We use AWS for our cloud storage. We use all of the Google products, as Mimi mentioned. So we're Google Email and Sheets and Google Drive. My team actually internally doesn't use email, so we use Slack for our point-to-point communication. And so obviously Zoom, and we actually built a product for Zoom, so ideal seats in the Zoom marketplace. So there's a lot of synergies and opportunities for collaboration with some of these big companies, but they have a lot of great credits and programs available for small businesses and startups, which we've definitely taken advantage of, because the alternative is that, you know, we are building a company in Greenville, South Carolina, to rival with companies built in San Francisco, to rival with companies built in New York City. And so from a access to resources, the trade-offs are, if you don't have those resources, you better have the money to pay for them, or the team or the people to pay for them. And so that's really helped us kind of bridge that gap from either spending money that we didn't have or trying to hire people we couldn't afford.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I've managed to get us back on time. Let me throw one more question out to the Lieutenant Governor and Assistant Leader West. What is your vision for small businesses in South Carolina? When you consider where we've been, where we are today, and where we're going, what is your vision, and how do we get there? Ma'am?
Go ahead, Jay. I went first last time.
Well, I think it's back to actually making sure that we provide the opportunity and we're able to communicate to the small businesses that already exist, or to the entrepreneurs like, Mimi, I think you started yours while you were at the College of Charleston. So that students in the colleges, in the universities, in the technical schools know how to acquire the software and the apps and the tools that are already out there. The other thing is to try to get the smaller businesses that have been around for a while comfortable with using that technology, because in the end, I think it's really going to increase profitability. It's going to make them more agile. They're able to adapt to a change in the economy, which we're going to have, whether it's a pandemic or a mortgage crisis, right? So basically, it's getting the knowledge that those things exist into the hands of the small businesses, and to be forward thinking enough to get creative, not just a mail flyer, but have seminars where they're encouraged to come, and there's a reason for them to go to become more profitable, because they're thinking about bottom lines.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I think it's, the future is very bright here in South Carolina for all of our small businesses. And, as our commitment, as you saw during the pandemic, is to streamline what we're doing in government. When the pandemic happened, the very first thing the governor wanted was a one-stop place to retrieve all information as far as business grants. How do you get your employees unemployment? How do you find the latest of what was coming down? Because we were getting hit with so much information. So that is our commitment to small business in South Carolina, to continue to streamline our services, to help you, and to have, I guess, let me back up. I always get asked, like, why don't we do this here in our state? Why don't we have this resource? And 9 out of 10 times we do. And so making sure that we pass along in a very streamlined manner to our small businesses all the resources we have available to them through commerce. So we will continue to do that. We have seen, I think we've all seen, even us old dogs, right, Jay, that technology is the way to go. I mean, we're seeing this in big companies too. I have good friends who have had large companies who said they would never allow employees to work from home because they didn't feel like they could monitor productivity. Well, instead of investing in brick and mortar, what they have pivoted done during the COVID is to invest, that same amount of money into software that helps with productivity, to help monitor it, to have a good comfort level, and have changed the whole dynamic of how they've done business for some of them for 35 to 40 years. And those are things they'll never turn back to. So, small business is the heart and soul, but I think we can all learn. And I think even big business is learning how many avenues are open to them when you talk about technology.
Wonderful. Thank you. As Harold can attest, if you put everybody on Slack, you'll monitor their productivity just by pinging them over and over and over again. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're in the Charleston area, go in and go to Tiny Tassel. Amy will love to see you, and download Bandwagon. Do it right now. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and your advice. Good luck. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Okay, let's go ahead and welcome in our next panel. We're incredibly fortunate to have Carl Blackstone, Columbia Chamber of Commerce president, as well as Susie Shannon, the president and CEO of the South Carolina Council on Competitiveness. There's Susie, thank you. And Jimmy Gray, the director of government affairs from the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber. Hey guys, how are you?
Doing great.
Wonderful. Was there
follow the last panel? It's tough.
I know it's a tough act to follow, but we'll be all right. So one of the great things about hosting events like this throughout the country is that we've had an opportunity to talk to civic leaders like you guys, the organizations that are constructed to support small businesses and therefore to help both economic recovery, but also the social fabric of our communities. You guys have your finger on the pulse as much as anybody, if not more than anybody. You're off the 4,000 foot level because you're not actually in the businesses every day, but you're looking at aggregate and in communities. I wonder if you can tell us what it looks like out there from Columbia to Myrtle Beach and throughout the Low Country. What are we talking about in terms of small business recovery, the state of the state? What should we be on the lookout for? Susie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to. So obviously parroting everything the last panel just said, absolutely correct. In December of 2020, the South Carolina Council on Competitiveness, we're often known as SC Competes, we actually released the first statewide comprehensive study of South Carolina's tech sector. And it's absolutely amazing. When you roll it all up, it's an $89 billion impact on our economy, with more than 180,000 South Carolinians employed and earning, by the way, about $80,000 a year on average. So a bit of an uptick. And what we saw that these numbers show is, one, we are diversifying our economic base. And two, we're attracting and developing and deploying technology, not only for pure tech, but to support our other robust industries like advanced manufacturing and logistics. And so that pandemic, has highlighted tech and innovation, the important role of moving our stuff, what that plays in everyday life, whether it's transporting life-saving medical supplies, stocking bags of rice in grocery stores, keeping our bathrooms comfortably full of toilet paper. So, I think we really have an opportunity to see this. It was going to happen anyway, but see this acceleration of innovation take place, and to have our entire economy to be able to look to it to thrive.
I can tell you, as somebody who's tried to hire people over the past year to come to South Carolina, the appeal of Charleston is 80% of the job offer, right? It's like, no, leave Boston, leave New York. It's very cold there in the winter. This is the place you want to be. It makes it easier. We have a baked in advantage. There's no question about it. Carl, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really been an interesting time, and you think about where we were 15, 16 months ago to where we are today. It's transformational, quite frankly, on a lot of fronts. Almost, you think back from the Great Recession to now, it's been a lot of changes in the last 13, 14 years. But wow, in the last 15 months, it's been phenomenal. And I think that change is going to continue. It was scary for a lot of small business owners right after the pandemic and the shutdown occurred. And most folks were just really not sure what to do. What we truly saw, the evidence came when the small businesses started to pivot, and which, by the way, I hope we never have to use that word again. I'm over it, by the way, but so I'm sorry I used it. But what we've seen, those that could rely on technology, those that could actually transform their business to make it a larger audience, were very successful. And those that were quick and nimble all relied on technology to be able to do that. They needed the various platforms to get their market to a different level. I mean, what's so interesting, you saw online sales last year double in South Carolina, the revenues of the state. Remote retailers doubled. I mean, so people were spending the same amount of money. They're just choosing to buy it differently. And so the smart entrepreneurs were able to see that and created a new marketplace for themselves. So technology gaps that exist, we can talk about this, but I mean, I think it highlighted the rural-urban divide a little bit. And hopefully that curve will be flattened with some broadband initiatives that are coming through Washington, through Columbia. But it's been I think if we fast forward 25 or 30 years, this is going to be, the next 3 years will be a pivotal time in our history of the amount of change that's going to happen. I think it will equal the Industrial Revolution, quite frankly.
For 10 years, I have been jumping up and down on conference stages and in boardrooms telling people about the digital transformation and that this period is coming, that all companies need to retire their tech debt, whether they be Fortune 500s or 10-person startups. We got more done in 18 months than we did in the previous 10 years. You know, there's no good time to have a global pandemic. This was the best time in history to have a global pandemic. Right? This was the only time where we could have kept a country running, the world running, where we could have generated any sort of economic momentum coming out of it because of the access to those tools and services. It also highlighted, as we just heard, both from the governor and the lieutenant governor, that there are a number of public policy questions that need to be answered about access to information, about access to resources and educational material, and broadband. I mean, I can't believe we're still having this conversation. In 2006, I was working in the Senate for Olympia Snow, and we were having this conversation about the digital divide. We haven't fixed it yet. Jimmy, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much for having me. Like Susie and Carl said, this is an exciting time in terms of technology and in our state of South Carolina. I'm here in Myrtle Beach. We are not as diversified of our economy as Susie has mentioned. In our particular corner of the state, we are tourism centric, and we have advocacy efforts ongoing to try and diversify that economy, but we are still a tourism based economy. That said, there are ways that technology has improved and become a part of the tourism experience for our visitors. In terms of how's it looking in Myrtle Beach right now, it's crazy. We're so busy. In 2019, we did 20.6 million visitors. I think in 2020, we dropped down to around 12 or 13 million. I wouldn't be shocked if we did 21 or 22 million visitors in 2021. Everybody's up about 19% on average. And specifically talking about technology, given the focus of our discussion, you wouldn't think of there's not really a virtual way to do tourism, although some folks got creative with Zooms and with YouTube videos. But we did see hotels, like Carl said, the buzzword there, be nimble to their check-in process. One fascinating couple different hotels have done the drive-through check-in, where you do the majority of you fill out all your information online, and then instead of going in and clogging up the lobby with a bunch of different bodies where it's difficult to social distance, you don't get out of your car. You go to you pull up to the lobby, you don't get out of your car. Somebody comes to your car, checks you in, hands you your key, then you go right to the parking garage, and then you go right to your room. It creates some more social distance, and I'm proud of the way those hotels and restaurants have used technology to stay nimble, like Carl said, to steal his word.
Hey,
I was one of the 21 million that was there in May.
hey, Jay, you mind if I follow up something that Jimmy said? So first
Absolutely.
thing, Jimmy, I'm rooting for you because you're in my home base. I actually grew up in that area. born and bred. So, I'd mentioned our December 2020 economic impact study around the state's tech system, $89 billion impact. One of the remarkable things that we actually saw was exploding growth year over year. And we specifically 2009 to 2010. So we haven't even captured the last few years on this, but the increasing reliance on tech firms by industry sectors of all kinds of phases: retail, hospitality, advanced manufacturing, of course, which is, kind of the backbone of the whole state's economy. But by the way, most of those tech firms that other sectors are relying upon are small business themselves. The one point I wanted to mention is that the biggest year-over-year growth and increasing reliance on tech by a particular sector other than tech was leisure and hospitality companies. There we actually saw more than a 260% increase in their reliance on tech firms between 2009 and 2010. And it's because a lot of that, those tech-based firms that support the industry are actually also located in that region as well.
They get close to their customers.
Yeah. And
There's
across the world.
Yeah, this is not in your question packet, but I have a scenario for you that I want to just bounce off of you guys real quick. One of the things that we see increasingly through our research, as well as anecdotes and discussions like this, is that traditional legacy industries like food and beverage, leisure, tourism, manufacturing, even logistics, legacy businesses, been around for 100 years. They're part of the fabric of places like destinations like Myrtle Beach or port cities like Charleston. They're just part of the way that we go about doing our lives, are increasingly being disrupted and made more efficient by small changes. For example, drive-in, drive-through check-in, or digital wallets that enable you to not check in at all, but to just go right to your room, as well as beacons that you can put on the side of a container that can track it at a more efficient clip than you could with a scan system for ports, for example. All of those technologies seem to be fairly complicated, right? That they take their enterprise quality, they take a large amount of software, they take a lot of skill and technical expertise. But the truth is they are built in much the same way that Harold built Bandwagon, through acquisitions of smaller businesses, through entrepreneurial spirit, and the increase in availability of capital, all of which is baselined by access to enterprise sort of entryway technology and solutions, like the advertising that hotels do on Instagram and Facebook and Google, like the ability to sell goods and services on Shopify and Amazon, et cetera. There is an ecosystem that has been developed here. And I'm wondering, I know I have my opinion, but I'm wondering what you guys think about A, that theory, and B, what South Carolina can and should do to strengthen that, as you heard me call it, the digital safety net, as well as to increase and expand our footprint as a state as we compete with the rest of the country for companies that can drive us from a technological standpoint and from an education. I mean, we have tremendous universities in the state who can and should be putting people in the workforce here at a higher tech job. What do you guys think about that?
Susie, you taking that? Or you?
Well, I can take a stab. I mean, certainly if you want to think about, not only has that incremental technology and even some of that exploding exponential technology advancement made life easier and more efficient for the workforce, for the companies. I mean, now you've got machine learning that can actually mash that button instead of a human mashing that button, leaving that human then to do other tasks, that perhaps the technology is not yet equipped to do. And if you think about robots, right, and entry technology to workforce, some of them are just using an Xbox controller system. So if they're growing up, around gamification, they just sort of pick up that Xbox and, they can have 10 tons running down the production line, right? Or hoist it up 50 feet in the air. And
I wouldn't trust my 6-year-old, but my 10-year-old can do it for sure.
Jay, I'll tell you, I think this goes back to what I touched on a few minutes ago, but others as well. I mean, South Carolina is such a small state. And historically, it's been a relationship state. Everybody knows everybody. It's 2 degrees of separation, stuff that no other state compares to South Carolina in the size and the connectivity. But it's connected within the the borders of South Carolina historically. And so one, we're seeing population increases like crazy, especially along the coast. What we've got to figure out over the next 10 years is once we get the broadband, I think broadband is going to be the great leveler, because there's so much growth that Charleston can take on, right? And as well as Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head, the coast has just gone bonkers in the last 10 years. But if we're going to see success in South Carolina, it can't just be along the coast or in Greenville or in the urban areas of Columbia. We've got to permeate the corridors outside of the urban marketplace if we really want to develop South Carolina. And that's where potentially you got great quality of life in South Carolina. You got access. So there's selling points to the rural parts of South Carolina. Now that remote working is in, it's an opportunity really for us to think differently. But we've got to invest in infrastructure and education, because the education piece going along with the infrastructure they go in tandem. But we've got to get a lot of these folks that have been having successful businesses just in their marketplace where they are, get them educated on the technologies available, but also educate them on those said technologies.
Susie, you're on mute.
Sorry. And that technology is not hard, right?
Correct.
Technology is getting.
It's a mindset though. It's a phobia.
That's exactly right. That's right.
And so
That's right.
getting them equipped with it, understanding it, and which is a generational thing. Yeah.
Jimmy, sorry, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Just, you talked about the creativity of the bandwagon representative from Greenville. I was thinking back to some of the ways that our business owners around here were creative using technology. I had never heard of this advent of ghost kitchens a year ago, but we saw brick and mortar restaurants opening up ghost kitchens using Uber Eats and Grubhub, where there wasn't actually a physical location of Jimmy's pancakes, but you could get them delivered to you. Only available via Uber Eats or Grubhub. Fascinating. Coming from a guy that had never used Zoom a year and a half ago in his entire life, to see that there are business owners. And Carl, you made the point that it's a generational thing. A lot of these business owners, they're in older generations that are adapting. So I think that a lot of creative minds out there have come up with solutions to ghost kitchens, to this check-in process that we talk about. I noticed that both Susie and Carl mentioned the importance of connecting with higher education, with colleges and universities in this process. Couldn't agree more. We have some of the finest in the state as it relates to higher ed and tech schools. So connecting with them will certainly lead to success.
The ghost kitchen piece is, I actually pretty recently had a conversation with somebody about this. It's nothing new, right? As Carl said, this is a relationship-based state. This every business, every town, every state is relationship-based. It's just the nature of human civilization, right? Ghost kitchens are how we've been able to get sticky buns in our local bakery for 100 years, right? They're cooked off-site and they're brought in and delivered. They're not done there. That's insane. Like, you do it at scale to reduce the cost. But we never gave it another thought until it was delivered to our homes in a basket every morning. And we thought, well, this is great. Uber Eats invented something new. It's different ways to do something old. Zoom is a 14-year-old company. This is a publicly traded company. It's been around for 14 years that nobody had ever heard of until the pandemic. And now they're trading off the charts, acquiring businesses, creating open stores, polls on an API. They are a tremendous American success story because this is what technology does. The cycles of innovation move faster in this space than they do anywhere else.
Yeah, a 14-year overnight success that 6 months into the pandemic, their CapEx was greater than American, Delta, and United combined.
That's right. And the success story was actually that they were not ready to scale the way that they did. They stubbed their toe pretty hard on a privacy issue early days, and they engineered their way out of it, right? They invested, they saw where they were going, much like Harold seeing through the wall and deciding to acquire a business instead of trimming his sails. they invested in the construction of a more secure end-to-end system that enabled this level of communication, where we're talking to hundreds of people on YouTube right now while having a Zoom conversation spread out all over South Carolina. It's a remarkable time that we're living in. Got a couple more minutes. Finishing thoughts, any words of wisdom you want to leave for folks, or notes you want to drop in for anybody? Susie, you want to go first?
Well, I kind of harken back to what the governor said. The backbone of what we do every day is nurture and manage industry clusters. One of our newest ones that we rolled out last year is technology and cybersecurity. Clusters are complicated to define because they require cooperation alongside competition. Of course, our favorite high school definitions, we're working together to beat up other people, and our small businesses are that magic sauce of our economy. I also want to just mention really quickly, we have cash to put on the dash for South Carolina-based firms that are looking to solve their research problems at the speed of business. And we're doing that in partnership with the South Carolina Department of Commerce. And a lot of it is around technology. And of course, we're always enlisting our small businesses to take advantage.
Wonderful. Jimmy, you want to go next?
Yeah, I wanted to real quickly brag on our state. So in addition to being a chamber of commerce, my organization is also the CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau for the Visit Myrtle Beach destination. So tasked with getting all those people to come here. And our marketing campaign during the pandemic was nuanced. The kind of message that you're trying to send to people to visit responsibly, come when you're ready. So we kind of had this message of sending you some sunshine, sending pictures of the beach to people in New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. We just won an award last week from the U.S. Travel Association, the National Travel Association, for best marketing campaign. South Carolina and Myrtle Beach beat out Orlando, beat out Tampa, St. Pete, beat out Hawaii, all these other amazing destinations throughout the state or throughout the country. So creativity is everything. We got a lot of brilliant minds in our state. So love connecting with you folks here.
Wonderful. And lastly, Carl?
Yeah, thank you for having a great discussion. I think we're really excited here in Columbia what's happening in our marketplace. A lot of tech startup companies that have relocated here. Some due to the pandemic, some were here before, but are now seeing a lot of progress because of the change that we're seeing across the state and the country. So it's a great time. I think I'll leave it with this. What we as leadership in the business community in NGOs, what we really need to focus on is connectivity and making sure that these small businesses understand their resources. We're clunky as that, the Lieutenant Governor's correct. We do about what every other state does. We just don't necessarily, it's not put into a format that's easy to use. But if we could work that piece of it and just make it as easy to do business as possible in the state, we're going to all see benefits.
Wonderful. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. Be safe out there. Good luck and enjoy.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
And on behalf of, thank you, Carl. And on behalf of all of our panelists today, and particularly the governor and lieutenant governor for joining us this morning. And thank you all for being here for this conversation. I hope that it was valuable. I hope that you took some good resources away from it. Please drop us a note at Connected Commerce Council, connectedcouncil.org if you have any additional questions. We're also more than happy to plug you in with any of the speakers who were nice enough to join us today. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and we'll be in touch soon.